Hello to all my students. I hope you are safe at home and now you have started studying. All the sessions are very interesting and they are going to give you great knowledge. And I know that you have searched the words from dictionary which I gave you in the last session. I'm gonna check everybody's notebook. Okay? Come, let us just have a quick recap of our last session and then we will start our today's class. We found out that how the whole world was crazy about Indian commodities. Now the Muslim Turks, they sealed the sea route. This was the time of all the great discoveries. As many sailors, they tried to find out the new sea route to India. But they were not successful. One among them was Christopher Columbus, and he found out a new land, which was America. Finally, Vasco da Gama was the first person who found out the new sea route to India, and from that time, Portuguese, they gained a huge amount of profit in trading. Along with Portuguese, there were many other European nations who thought to have the trading relations with India. Among them, the traders were from Dutch, Britishers, and the French. In this session, we are going to study about these three traders, that how they started trading in India and their downfall too. So let's begin our class. It was finally the time to take strict actions. As we all know, Shah Jahan was a strong ruler in Delhi. And when Subedar complained about how Portuguese are not following rules and regulations and creating problem in the trade, Shah Jahan gave the instructions to break down the fort of Hooghly and burn the ships which were used for trading. After this incident, Portuguese started losing the territories. And once the Portuguese started losing, this gave the power to other European nations, and they were ready to grab this opportunity. Also, Europeans were having strong power and enthusiasm to achieve great height. They were putting a lot of dedication towards their goals, as they were fond of Indian commodities. Dutch were already inspired by the success of Portuguese regarding trade. And when Dutch entered in India, at that time the accommodations were also very high. And there were still some of the Portuguese left, and thus they were competing with the Portuguese, the Dutch people. So it was a little difficult situation. Initially, the Dutch established the fort at Pulicat and Madras. They also established a fort in Agra in 1663. Now, they were in an initial phase of establishing themselves. And in that phase, they found a loophole. That was, they had no experience in trade. And they were not able to execute the plans. Their work was not organized. The administration system was poor. See, students, this is very obvious that if the building blocks, the roots of any organization is not strong, then how are they going to get success in long run? Before anything, there has to be a proper manageable planning. Only then we are going to focus on our work. Only then we are going to execute the further things. Only then we are going to gain the profit. Dutch were very weak in these things, and this was the main problem of their loss. And if we are weak, this becomes an advantage for our competitors. Britishers also emerged at the same time, and the Dutch were not able to face the Britishers, as Britishers were superior, and competition with the tycoons was tough. Finally, the Dutch left India. They were not able to face the further losses. Further, see British interest in India. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth of England in the year 1600 CE, the British established the East India Company. This company belonged to merchants who wanted to increase their wealth by undertaking trade with India. The first British ship arrived in India at the port of Surat in 1608 CE. Captain W. Hawkins, the captain of the ship, was the first British to set foot in India. He met Jahangir but did not get permission to trade. Later, Sir Thomas Roe arrived in India and acquired permission from Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan gave permission to the British to carry out trade in Bengal. In the last paragraph of Portuguese, we saw that Shah Jahan opposed the Portuguese for trade, but later he agreed when the Britishers convinced him. Britishers were day by day succeeding all the territories from Surat to Ahmedabad to Bharuch. They started gaining the power towards the East India also. Planning of Britishers was perfect. They were organized and they made a very strong bond with the kings. Therefore, their army also gained a lot of power. Now all of you might be thinking about East India Company. So let us see that how this East India Company established its power. In 1600 CE, Elizabeth granted the authority to East India Company. In 1617, the Mughal Emperor granted the rights to East India Company, permitting them to establish the factories in India. In 1756, Britishers were growing their military strength in Bengal. At this particular situation, Nawab of Bengal was very scared. In 1765, the work of revenue administration was granted to East India Company, enabling them to collect taxes in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa on the Mughal Emperor's behalf. And once, if anyone gets the financial power, then all of you know that they become powerful and they can take the decisions according to them. This was the main trick by Britishers to gain the power in India. British East India Company was capturing every state one by one, and also they were exploiting our policies. They were only earning for their benefit. Do you think, students, that this is right? These things were not making us happy. Our workers, our people, they were working really hard. But when we will not get enough return, what is the use of working so hard? The Britishers were funding huge amounts to Britain. Also, they were giving money to kings. But what about the workers? What about the citizens? Helping king was making them politically strong. So our people were completely helpless. And finally, the Britishers, they were the most powerful traders in our country. The French established the French East India Company in year 1664 CE. They established factories in Surat, Machilipatnam and Pondicherry. The head of the French company had the desire to expand the European rule in India. Thus, the French and British stood in competition against each other to become the strongest European company. There were innumerable disputes and battles, and finally, the British emerged as the winner. Students, you might be thinking that these companies were here in our country for trade purposes. Then why were they fighting among themselves? The reason is, as the French started gaining power in India, this was not at all liked by Britishers. They were very insecure. They wanted to have the supreme power in India. Between 1746 to 1756, the British East India Company and French East India Company fought in India, and French lost and completely demolished. Thus, Britishers got their supremacy back. They were the ultimate rulers. They sustained because of their great unity, planning, and equipments. They forced everyone to leave India. Students, we will stop our today's session here. I request every one of you to make the mind maps of today's session and revise both the sessions again. Okay, now little homework. New words for today are emerged, opposed, demolished, loophole. You have to find the meanings and note them down. Thank you, students. Take care.